Yeah. All right. Welcome to lecture number 2. I try and do about an hour per class and give us just 5-minute breaks. Okay, so we'll have more than 3 sections, but just for clarity purposes. All right. We're going to be in the Restoration Road workbook, and we're really going to go through this. I'd like to get through a section per hour, but I don't know if we will. So we're just going to go through it until we get through it, okay? So we're gonna kind of, you're gonna need to go through and do things, and I'll just point that out as we go through, but why we do what we do and where we're at. And so let's start with reality. These are 8 R's, right? And the first R is reality. This is trying to, well, quite frankly, if you've read through this section before, this is like a 2x4 to the forehead is what it really is. I mean, it's pretty stark when you see what something really is. And so what we're going to do is we're going to read these sections here. And so Keith, go ahead and get us started. Read a paragraph and then pass the mic, and you guys at the other end be ready, and we'll go Keith, Jeshua, Marcus, Robert, Ethan, and then Becky, and then back to Keith. You good up there for that, Ethan?
Our class notes, I would think, are going to look a little bit different for these classes that we're going through this.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay. Perfect.
But you'll be able to take some notes while other people are reading
Right.
too. So, all right.
Yeah. All right. The reality of the porn problem. Let's begin by defining what pornography is. The statistics that are available deal with only what we might consider hardcore porn, that is, people engaged in sex acts. However, pornography really should be considered anything audio or visual, books, photos, videos, etc., that you use to stimulate yourself sexually. In other words, while the lingerie or swimsuit magazine are not considered pornography by society, if you are looking at those to stimulate yourself sexually, they are in fact pornographic. That being said, the statistics below relate to what most would consider more mainstream and harder pornography.
Marcus, that other, go ahead, Joshua, and that one, there's a mute button on it, so you want to look.
The statistics on pornography are staggering. Conservative estimates say that currently only 4.2% of websites are dedicated to pornography. Still, that represents more than 42 million pornographic sites. Mind you, this is only websites. This doesn't include actual magazines, videos, video games, mobile games, and any amazing array of new technology that is being co-opted to distribute pornography. To be clear, this is the number of websites that are claimed by those who declare that pornography isn't an issue that anyone should worry about.
I asked Joshua, have you ever looked at pornography? He said, Dad, I can't even say it. Yeah, you guys keep that one at this table. Turn it, mute it.
There was an article titled, "How Much Time Does the World Spend Watching Porn?" which was published to explain why pornography isn't an issue to worry about on October 31st, 2020 by Michael Castleman, M.A., on the Psychology Today website. In the article, the author concludes that pornography isn't a big deal and that it is basically like taking a coffee break, his actual comparison. However, he cites the fact that in April of 2020, the top 100 porn sites had 14.5 billion views from 3.3 billion unique visitors who spend an average of 6 minutes watching video sex. Yes, that was billion with a B. Now consider that there are just over 7.8 billion people on the entire planet. 2.9 billion people in the world still don't have internet access, and 1.9 billion people are under the age of 15. When you subtract out these groups, there are enough unique views in 1 month to represent everyone over 15 years of age with internet access visiting a porn site. Wait, that still leaves another 41,999,900 websites not accounted for.
Kind of dramatic.
In the above mentioned article, a 2014 study was cited by the University of Montreal, which found that single men averaged watching porn for 2 hours each week, and married men averaged 34 minutes a week. Remember, this is an article saying that pornography isn't an issue. According to webroot.com, a cybersecurity website, 25% of all internet searches and 35% of all downloads are for pornography. They also say that 40 million Americans regularly visit porn sites. According to the National Coalition for the Protection of Children and Families in 2010, 47% of all families in the United States reported that pornography is a problem in their home. Pornography use increases marital infidelity rate by 300%. And 56% of divorce cases involve one party having an obsessive interest in pornographic websites.
According to an article from the November-December 2020 issue of Mission Frontiers titled 15 Mind-Blowing Statistics About Pornography in the Church, 11 is the average age that a child is first exposed to porn, and 94% of children will see porn by the age of 14. 68% of church-going men and over 50% of pastors view porn on a regular basis. 76% of Christian young men between the ages of 18 to 24 actively search for porn. 55% of married men and 25% of married women say they watch porn at least once a month. Are you getting the idea? Even by the most conservative statistics, pornography isn't a problem for a few people. It is a destructive force to the fabric of our entire world, and Christians and churches are not immune.
Victory over sin requires honesty. Psalms 51, 6-7 says, "Behold, thou desirest truth in the inward parts, and in the hidden part thou shalt make me to know wisdom. Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow." To start your journey on the restoration road, let's take a candid look at your involvement in pornography. Be honest with your answers. Satan is the one who wants you to hide the truth, but God wants to reveal the problem so that you can get the victory.
So here is a assessment, okay? And this is a personal assessment, and you're wanting them to be honest with themselves about where they're at, okay? At what age did you, by the way, I don't look at these assessments. I don't go and look at these. I ask them, did you do it? What stood out most to you? Where did you realize the problem here? At what age did you first look at pornography? How do you access pornography? Circle all that apply: magazine, video, internet, video games, social media, community sales app. That'd be like, Craigslist and those type of things. Other. By the way, a lot of men tell me they access it through YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all of those social media apps. How frequently do you look at pornography? So many times a day, per week, per month? Only occasionally. How much time do you spend when looking at porn? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20, 30, an hour, less than an hour, greater than an hour? Identify the type of pornography you're watching. Types, okay, so here are 11 different things. Swimsuits or lingerie, single naked individual, sex acts between one man and one woman, group sex, fetish, age, race, body parts. By the way, Number 6, family relations. The number one, this was when I was doing my research, it was the number one searched phrase, or the number one search grouping on the number one pornographic website in the world was about family, basically incest. Sisters, brothers, parents, step sisters, and family relations. Number one searched. Bondage and S&M, that's sadomasochism. Same sex, violence, and rape. That's a whole category that's on all of those websites, by the way. Animals, children, anyone under 18. Were you sexually abused? Is there any root cause that you believe causes you to seek out pornography, and if so, what? When you look at strangers, do you imagine them in a sexual way? Are you constantly dealing with sexual thoughts? Do you have sexual thoughts about people at work or people at church? What triggers your desire to look at pornography? How much does your stress level increase your desire to look at pornography? There's a strong connection there, by the way. How many people know about your viewing of pornography? Have you ever had an affair? Do you look at dating or hookup apps? Have you ever looked at social media or online market apps to search for sex? Do you pay for subscriptions to pornographic material? Have you engaged with a stranger online in a sexual way? Have you ever visited a sex shop or strip club? Have you ever met a stranger to have sex? Have you ever paid someone for sex? Have you ever had sexual contact with a minor? Do you feel anxious or depressed after sex? Do you feel increasing lack of personal connection to people? Have you ever been confronted about your sexual practices? Have you ever sought help in dealing with sexual issues? Are you willing to let God do His correcting work in you? Are you willing to do the work that God asks of you? Well, this is pretty invasive questionnaire, okay? Again, I don't read these, but I ask them questions about them, particularly about certain parts of them, okay? Things that they say, hey, what about this root causes, those type of things. I tell you, if we pass this out in every church in America, it'd be shocking how many of these things people are involved in. It's a reality, okay? So what is pornography? We're going to go around the horn again here, and each of you read a step as we go through until we get to another paragraph like that, or a couple pages like that. So Keith, you're going to read step number 2, Jeshua step 3, and so forth. Okay, so
Memorization, memorize one first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, just read what it says.
Memorization, memorize 1 Corinthians 6:18. Flee fornication. Every sin that a man doeth is without the body, but he that committeth fornication sinneth against his own body. Know to grow. It is clear in the Bible that fornication is sin. It is also clear that it affects us in devastating ways according to the Scripture. Fornication impacts our spirit, soul, and according to this verse, our body as well. As we begin this study, we must confront the lies that we have believed, and in so doing, we will expose the very ugly truth about pornography.
All right.
Reality step 3. Identify and investigate. Using the Thayer's Greek lexicon, look up the words translated as fornication in 1 Corinthians 6:18. Write the Greek word and its definition on lines below. Note, the Thayer's Greek lexicon can be downloaded free online or for free in the eSword app. Know to grow. In this section, we will be working to break the lies of pornography. Here we go. One of the lies that people believe is that pornography is different than fornication. Let's see where the word fornication comes from in the Bible.
So I'll give you a hint, and you'll need to look this up and do it, but the word fornication comes from the word porneia and porneia. Does that sound familiar? Mm-hmm. Go ahead, number 4.
acknowledge. Did you notice in the last step that the word translated as fornication in the Bible is the Greek word porneia or porneo? Of course, this is where the term porn comes from. The word pornography simply means photographic fornication. Below, write out the truth about what pornography is according to the Bible.
All right, number 5 there. No, that's you.
Oh, it is me. Number 5, memorize 1 Corinthians 6:16. What? Know ye not that which he is joined to an harlot is one body? For two, saith he, shall be one flesh. Know to grow. This verse is the context from which the verse 18 is taken. Since we have established that pornography is fornication according to the Bible, it would be appropriate to acknowledge that those who engage in pornography are also engaging with an harlot, even though they might not be physically touching her. They are, in fact, spiritually and emotionally involved with her through their lust imagination.
Number 6.
Identify and investigate. Using a Thayer's Greek lexicon, look up the words translated as harlot in 1 Corinthians 6:18. Write the Greek word and its definition on the lines below. Define the Greek word for harlot. Define it. Know to grow. Notice the connection here between the word harlot and selling your body. Another word for this is prostitution. In other words, when receiving personal sexual gratification from images of a woman who received money for lewd acts, then you are engaging in prostitution according to the Bible.
The word there, by the way, is another variation of porn. Number 7.
Acknowledge. I hope you noticed again that the term harlot comes from a form of the same word we get the term porn. Based on the definition of the word harlot in the Bible, pornography is not only fornication, but is also prostitution. Below, write out the truth about what pornography is in your own words.
It's important that we hit these things here with folks. I mean, the first, talk about the severity of the issue or the broadness of the issue and really the problem. Now we're getting into what is pornography, the reality of what it is, because, listen, people lie to themselves about this. Mm-hmm. Society lies about, well, it's not hurting anybody. Well, of course it's hurting people. Mm-hmm. Of course it is. It can't help but, and we'll get into this more in a little bit, the real impact of it, okay? But, well, at least I'm not, I'm not committing fornication. Yes, you are. By definition, you are. Mm-hmm. Well, at least I'm not, being with a prostitute. Yes, you are. By definition, you are. Mm-hmm. You understand? No, let's knock these lies out. Let's stop believing these lies. This is what it is. It is fornication. It is prostitution. It is, okay? All right, number 8.
Memorize Matthew 5:28. But I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. Just in case you still were not convinced that looking at pictures or video was the same as committing the actions, Jesus made this point very clear.
Well, I don't believe that. Oh, really? Then you just disagree with Jesus. I mean, he said it. It's not hard to understand there, right? 9.
Identify and reject lies. Below, identify the lie that you have believed about pornography that has been exposed in the study and write out what God says about the truth that contradicts it.
All right. So the next section is an article or a section written on pornography's effect on your body. So Marcus, read the verse in that first paragraph, and then we'll do the same thing. We'll go each next person will read a paragraph.
Read the following article and answer the questions at the end. Pornography's effect on your body. Flee fornication. Every sin that a man doeth is without the body, but he that committeth fornication sinneth against his own body. 1 Corinthians 6:18. You might be tempted to take this verse and spiritualize it, generalizing that fornication is just a bad thing to do, but the depth of God's warning here has been borne out by science in an astonishing fashion. We know that sexually transmitted diseases created a vast amount of suffering and death. Currently, the World Health Organization says that there are more than 30 sexually transmitted diseases and only 4 are curable. 20% of Americans currently have an STD. Without a doubt, this is a direct result of sexual relationships outside of marriage.
Since we have seen that pornography is also fornication, if STDs were the only physical consequence, we might say that this chapter didn't apply, or this verse didn't apply. That simply isn't the case. The physicality, damaging effects of pornography, the physically damaging effects of pornography are vast and impactful. According to every medical study I looked at, the physical response to normal and biblical sexual relationships is magnified in the use of pornography. As a matter of fact, it is part of what makes it such an addictive behavior.
A researcher by the name of Nicholas Tinbergen is best known for his experiment with butterflies that tested whether overwhelming a certain stimulus could change behavior. He studied the mating habits of butterflies and noticed that the males were drawn to the colors and movements of the females when mating. Tinbergen then made cardboard cutout recreations of the female butterflies and painted them with more vibrant colorings and made them move at a more regular pace. The males not only tried to mate with the cardboard cutouts, but they actually preferred the cardboard to the actual female butterflies present. Tinbergen showed by his experiment that those things that stimulate us biologically can be overwhelmed and affected by artificial means.
Yeah, hold on a second. There's another illustration of this, and I didn't put all of these things into the book, but there was years ago, there was a plan to create an American Silk Road, and they wanted to bring silkworms over here and release them into the wild and harvest and all this. This was back in the 1920s or 30s, something like that. Well, because they're not native, they, of course, created a bunch of devastation. And the moths that are, part of that process were just decimating the forest. And so they didn't know how to fix it. And so a researcher figured out that the moths, when it was mating time, were attracted to a pheromone that was released by the female. And so what they did is they recreated this pheromone in the lab, and in the areas where they were having these problems, they went and during mating season, they just released a lot of this pheromone, and the males were so attracted. The stronger pheromone was out and about, and the males just spent all their time trying to find that stronger pheromone female, and they did not mate because of that. And so the moths died out. All of them died out, and it was all because the males were attracted to the pheromone, and so the false pheromone prevented them from mating with the actual females. These are studies that demonstrate the problem here. The fake stuff is attractive because it accentuates things men are naturally attracted to in a false way, and it draws away the attention from reality. Okay. All right, go ahead and read. I know that next phrase is short, so go ahead and read the next two sections there, next two paragraphs.
When it comes to sexual interaction, there are 5 hormones that are released. This is described in the following quote from an article on
Covenant Eyes.
CovenantEyes.com. In the porn circuit, Sam Black describes the various hormones and neurotransmitters involved when someone views porn and how each ingredient in this neural cocktail contributes to the problem.
Keith?
When having sex or watching porn, dopamine is released into a region of the brain responsible for emotion and learning, giving the viewers a sense of sharp focus and a sense of craving. I have got to have this thing. This is what I need right now. It supplies a great sense of pleasure. The next time the viewer gets the itch for more sexual pleasure, small packets of dopamine are released in the brain, telling the user, remember where you got your fix last time. Go there to get it.
Read the next couple. No,
Oh man, how do you say that word?
norepinephrine.
Yeah. Norepinephrine, pine, is also released, creating alertness and focus. It is the brain's version of adrenaline. It tells the brain something is about to happen and we need to get ready for it. Sex and porn also trigger the release of oxytocin and vasopressin. These hormones help to lay down the long-term memory for the cells. They bind a person's memory to the object that gave him or her sexual pleasure.
These are actually called the bonding hormones, and they are what creates that connection, intimate connection. And so when a person has these hormones released during viewing pornography, they actually develop that connection with the images instead of a person like it's God intended. Read the next couple there.
Sex and porn also.
No.
I'm sorry. The body releases endorphins, natural opiates that create a high of pleasure throughout the whole body. After sexual release, serotonin levels also change, bringing a sense of calm and relaxation.
This system works the way it's supposed to work when you're having sex with your spouse. Together, you can experience a high and alertness of sexual pleasure and a deep calm afterward. Endorphins and serotonin. With each sexual embrace, you are emotionally bonding to this person. Oxytocin and vasopressin. Over time, a craving for sex is transformed into a desire for one another. Dopamine.
Ethan?
Pornography circumvents the normal sexual response that creates a connection to your spouse and instead creates neural pathways in the brain that affect the actual function of your mind. These neural pathways become the preferred response of the brain when stimulated. In other words, your brain hardwires the way that it wants to respond under certain criteria, and that is the root of compulsive behaviors. Consider the following quote from the article, 9 Things You Should Know About Pornography in the Brain, from the gospelcoalition.com website.
Because the human brain is the biological anchor of our psychological experience, it is helpful to understand how it operates, says William M. Struthers, Associate Professor of Psychology at Wheaton College. Knowing how it is wired together and where it is sensitive can help us understand why pornography affects people the way it does.
Sexually explicit material triggers mirror neurons in the male brain. These neurons, which are involved with the process for how to mimic a behavior, contain a motor system that correlates to the planning out of a behavior. In the case of pornography, this mirror neuron system triggers the arousal, which leads to sexual tension and a need for an outlet. The unfortunate reality is that when he acts out, often by masturbating, this leads to hormonal and neurological consequences, which are designed to bind him to the object he is focusing on, says Struthers. In God's plan, this would be his wife, but for many men, it is an image on a screen. Pornography thus enslaves the viewer to an image, hijacking the biological response intended to bond a man to his wife, and therefore inevitably loosening that bond.
Dr. Struthers, in the book Wired for Intimacy, likens this process to receiving a neurological tattoo. This happens when Oxycontin and vasopressin combine to imprint lasting memories in the brain. These memories are there forever. The images don't go away because the chemicals have bonded them to your brain. This also causes a person to bond to the novelty of porn rather than the reality of a person.
Like with all addictive behavior, the brain is affected in an adverse way because of porn. With repeated porn use, numerous studies show that the brain's function itself begins to diminish. The amount of gray matter actually shrinks. The prefrontal cortex, which regulates self-control and the executive function critical to decision making, experiences a loss of neurons and function and actually disengages from the limbic system in the brain, which contains the reward center of the brain. Likewise, the functionality of the amygdala, part of the limbic system, diminishes, and where simple stimuli once produced the dopamine reward, more extreme stimulation is required to produce any effect at all. For a more detailed explanation of this, you can visit Scholarship Archive, BYU Education.
Yeah, you don't have to read the whole thing. Read that last section and the effects there.
Let me say it this way. Pornography literally causes brain damage. Some of this is irreversible, but not all of it if you stop being involved in pornography. Studies indicate a vast array of additional physical and emotional issues have been tied to frequent pornography use, including but not limited to erectile dysfunction, sleeplessness, chronic stress, anxiety, depression, loneliness, memory loss, anger, fatigue, changes in sexual preference.
All of this points to the truth of the scriptures. When you commit fornication, you're sinning against your own body. The personal cost of pornography is very high. Let me just say this. It mentioned anger up here. Very seldom that I come across someone who's involved in pornography who doesn't also have anger issues. Very seldom. Here's Herman. Herman the brain. And if you look at your brain, Herman's brain, that is, tear it apart. Brain has three primary parts, okay? You've got your nerves, your brain stem right here. This is your autonomous nerve system, heart rate and breathing and digestive and all that type of stuff. This area here in the middle is your limbic system. It's made up of lots of different parts. One of them, a couple of them were mentioned here, but the limbic system is the reward center of your brain, and it's also the emotional center of your brain. It's where emotions are registered in neuroscience. Now, you're more than your brain. This is your meat mind, your carnal mind, okay? Sarx, your flesh. This is really where, when we talk about sin dwelling in the flesh, this is where it dwells, right here. Okay, it's not your finger. It's here. Your finger is a tool to accomplish appeasing the desires of the mind. The Bible talks about the desires of the mind. And when it says that, it's talking about the flesh here, this mind, this brain, okay? And your spirit and soul interact with your brain, but they aren't. Your brain isn't your soul or your spirit. This is your flesh, okay? But your spirit and soul interact obviously with your brain, with your whole body system, okay? So the limbic system here, when these are the areas where those chemicals are released from, okay? Then the frontal cortex, prefrontal cortex, that's in Herman here, that's this pink part up front, okay? This is where rational self-control and all that type of stuff takes place. Look sometime, go and look at brain scans of pornography users. It's fascinating. There's websites you can go and look at that show brain scans of heroin addicts, meth addicts, whatever. Pornography users, people that actively use pornography, have more brain damage than heroin users. Blows theirs too. Yeah. And what they say happens is that your limbic system releases so much of these chemicals that it literally creates in this area a separation, a severing of the limbic system from the prefrontal cortex. It's where people lose rational ability to stop themselves. What point does a man start out and just say, you know, I think I'd like to abuse children? You understand what I'm saying? He's cut off rationalization from in his brain. He's created so much brain damage, or woman. They create so much brain damage that it doesn't even seem to faze them that they're watching people have sex with animals or every kind of debauchery and putrid thing and child pornography and all of these things. It's vile. How could someone get to that point? Because they've severed their conscience and their self-control. Here, not long ago, and you're seeing this more and more, by the way, and the more prevalent all this stuff is in our world, the more you're going to see it. But here just the other day, I don't know when it was, not too long ago, there was an article, and I'm not trying to be disgusting, but this is just what we're dealing with. There was an article about a guy got on an airplane. As soon as they took off, he pulled his shorts down and started masturbating right there in the seat, people next to him. The woman took her phone out and took a picture and called and complained because she thought he would deny it. And he continued to masturbate when they came up to say, and they said, well, why? When they diverted, they landed, and they arrested him, and they said, why did he? Well, he said, well, I felt like doing it, so, you know. There's no rational way to explain that except for he's just disconnected his brain. Okay, to where, and this is reprobate. This is that reprobate level, right? They've indulged the flesh so much that they've literally destroyed their conscience. So it didn't bother him at all to do that, or others to do so many other perverted things. Use the microphone.
You had said that the frontal cortex disconnects itself as a result
Well,
of...
it is disconnected. You look at those, go online and look for brain scans, pornography addicts. Okay, and you'll see, and there's websites that talk about this, and you can see the actual brain scans, and they'll talk about how, you know, during certain points, it's like the prefrontal, during when they're actually watching porn, their frontal cortex just literally shuts off over time. I mean, we're talking about repeated viewing and stuff, okay? But remember, average 18 to 34-year-old, 2 hour single guy, 2 hours a day. You know, was it 2 hours a week? Whatever it was. I mean, you're talking about daily viewing. There literally are people that it's just constant. And what they're doing is they're creating brain damage. He that committeth fornication sinneth against his own body. You pull one up right there?
Wow, that's worse than drugs.
Yep. Worse than drugs, that's right. Yep. Yep. All right. This is reality. This is the society lying to you and saying, oh, pornography is not bad. It won't hurt you. It's normal. It's natural. Everyone does it. And all these are lies from the devil, from the pit of hell. It is killing you. It is killing you. It is fornication. It is adultery. It is prostitution. It is killing you. That's the reality. And you have to be confronted with that. Okay? Remember, when we do counseling, we start with question to understand, question to reveal, judge from the word unto repentance. You can't restructure without repentance. And people, unfortunately, have to see reality before they're going to come to repentance. Okay? And we're judging from the word, but we're also drawing in. I mean, look at all the science involved in all of this and all sorts of stuff. All right, skip number 11. Who's next? Ethan, number 12.
Memorize and quote 1 Thessalonians 4:3. For this is the will of God, even your sanctification, that you should abstain from fornication. The word sanctification in this verse means to be holy and pure. Fornication causes us to be impure. It causes us to live a life that is not reflective of true holiness. You cannot be involved in pornography and be reflective of the holiness of our pure God. It is important that you take responsibility to sanctify yourself and put away fornication in your life. You cannot do the will of God without this.
Absolutely. 13, read Mark 7:20 through 23. Write a few sentences of personal reflection concerning where God says that your desire for pornography comes from. All right, Becky, read step 14.
Memorize and quote 1 Corinthians 6:13. Meats for the belly, and the belly for meats, but God shall destroy both it and them. Now the body is not for fornication, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. The body is not for fornication. This thought has two primary applications that need to be made. First, your body is not for fornication. God obviously gave you a body. The reason he gave it to you was not so that you could focus on its pleasure, but rather so that you could use it for his glory. Secondly, no one else's body is for fornication. The pictures that you look at or the people you lust over, their body is not for fornication. It is not for your gratification. Their body is given to them to bring glory to God as well. We are not to objectify the body in desire for sexual gratification. We are to use our bodies to bring glory to God.
All right, we're going to skip number 15. There's some of these that are repeated. They're like identify a lie and so forth. Let's go on to step number 16. So each paragraph, if there's a single sentence, read that sentence and then the next paragraph.
Pornography's connection to human trafficking and sex slavery.
This is so important to understand.
Yes, you read that heading right. And yes, there is a direct connection between pornography, human trafficking, and sex slavery. The connection is so strong that these things should not be considered as different from one another at all. Forced labor statistics say that there are around 4.5 million people in our world in forced sex slavery. That number includes men, women, and children, but the greatest number of them are young women and girls.
There are more slaves today than there were during the Civil War. But no one talks about that.
Melissa Farley, a researcher in this area, published an article on prostitutionresearch.com in which she says that roughly half of the people she has interviewed who were rescued from sex slavery were forced to make pornographic films. 80% of those freed were forced to reenact specific acts of pornography by the people who enslaved them. This is very consistent with virtually every study that is available. The shameful truth is that the significant amount of pornography is the internet. Pornography on the internet is tied to human trafficking and sex slavery in one way or another. On one side, you have the demand of pornography, creating the mark for sex slavery. Now, on the other side, you have the effect of pornography on the viewers creating the desire for escalation.
You all remember Elizabeth Smart? Did you ever read what happened to her when she was taken? The guy that took her would make her watch porn and then act out the scenes with him. Pornography and sex slavery are the same thing. Sex slaves are used to create it, and then it's used to manipulate sex slaves into certain behaviors. All right? It is one thing, not separate things. You say, well, I saw that there's this porn star, and she said she loves making porn. No, it's all okay. Well, for every one of those, there's 100 or 1,000 that are forced sex slaves. Okay, and many of the others that supposedly are porn stars are there by coercion, which by definition is sex slavery. Okay. Verse 3, paragraph 3.
Please understand, I am not saying that everyone who views porn will pursue physical escalation in their pursuit of sexual gratification, but let's be real for a minute. Not everyone who looks at porn will hire a prostitute, but what are the chances that someone who hires a prostitute doesn't also look at porn? Not everyone who looks at porn commits rape, but what are the chances that someone who commits rape doesn't look at porn? Not everyone who looks at porn abuses children, but what are the chances that someone who abuses children doesn't look at porn? Do you understand where I am going here? No one becomes a drug addict without taking drugs for the first time. Maybe they stop after only a few times and don't become an addict, but there is no one who loses themselves in drug addiction that thought they would be the one it happened to.
The idea that participants in pornography are all happily paid actors who are willingly engaging in these activities for their own and your pleasure is a hellish lie. The Freedom Youth Project Foundation states that thousands of children and young adults are trafficked and forced to make pornographic films. Catherine McKinnon, a professor at Harvard Law School, says consuming pornography is an experience of bought sex. This process of buying sex in the form of pornography feeds not only a hunger to purchase more, but eventually to act out what has been seen. Pornography is quite literally advertising for prostitution and trafficking.
An article from sistersagainsttrafficking.org reads as follows. Pornographers, like other pimps, learn how to exploit economic and psychological vulnerabilities to coerce women and girls to get into and stay in the sex industry. Other times they threaten or use alcohol and drugs to induce compliance, which is included in some state definitions for coercion. Understanding that pornography and sex trafficking are interconnected challenges us to seek justice for victims of commercial sex exploitation. We must acknowledge that pornography is a root cause of human trafficking and fuels the demand for more victims of sexual exploitation. It is essential to understand the reality of pornography and act accordingly.
The demand for more content includes the trafficking and abuse of children. The most searched terms relating to pornography, according to most studies, are youth and teen. Currently, 2 million children are exploited. In the Richmond Justice Initiative website, it is reported that 1 out of every 5 pornographic images are of a child, and 55% of a child pornography comes from the U.S. There is additionally the reality of escalation related to pornography. An estimated 40 to 80% of consumers of child pornography will go on to abuse and molest a child, according to citizenlink.com. The reality is that as long as there is a demand for pornography, there will be people who will victimize the vulnerable to profit from it.
The list of victims is enormous. Men, women, and children are impacted. Yes, when you watch porn, you are contributing to the exploitation of all of them. I'm not trying to shame you here, I'm trying to inform you. The lies of pornography are not only easy to believe, they are in many ways desirable. You want to believe that all those people are willing and happy participants, because then there is no responsibility on your part for their pain. You want to believe that pornography is a victimless transaction, not like actual prostitution, rape, sexual abuse, or human trafficking and sex slavery. It just isn't the case. There are scores of accounts of human trafficking, sexual, and child abuse videos on all the major porn sites. The reality is that it is far harder to get them down than to put them up.
As I write this article, the story is in the news about the 17-year-old young woman who was abducted from the Dallas Mavericks game and was found in Oklahoma City a few days later. Why was she found? Her family hired an investigator that found pornographic videos of her already posted to the internet. If that had happened once, it would be a tragedy. But it happens every day. It happens every day, though. Even if you think that you are not watching that kind of thing, you don't know, and you probably already have. I could fill this book up with just news articles about women and children who have been victimized by the wicked people in this way. When you view pornography, you are creating the market that motivates them.
Supply and demand. If there weren't a market, they wouldn't have the motivation to steal children and victimize them or abduct women and force them into these scenarios. Do you understand? So when someone says, well, I don't watch that kind of porn, there's a market for pornography. It's a huge market. It's a very prolific market. They make more money in pornography than the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball combined. There's a market for it. And as long as there's a market, there's a demand, there will be people trying to profit. And how better to profit than to get someone to do all of these things for free as a slave, and you collect all the money. Evil people do evil things. But if you don't watch pornography, that's one less viewer fueling the market. So just watching pornography fuels the market for these things. Understand? Even if you say, I'm very careful. I'm very, very careful. I only watch consensual sex. Okay, you're still fueling the market. There's no other way around it. There is no other way to look at it. Okay, that's reality. All right, let's take a 5-minute break real quick, and then we'll finish out this section. We'll get into the next section.